All right. Welcome. My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you have not been here before, I hope that you enjoy the presentation and maybe find some other things in which might tickle your fancy. Might find something that intrigues you that you want to keep coming back for. Tonight's show is going to be called the IDAHO4 When Death Comes to Town. This is my second live of the day. The first one was very inspirational, and I think very positive. And like I said earlier, I hope that I don't extinguish the flame that I started early this morning on a positive note. I'm trying not to. This one won't be so bad, but it is going to be talking about some situations that occurred and some graphic details that were given out, and we're going to talk about that. So I hope that you came to be entertained in an educational way, not as an entertainment, to use the IDAHO4 as a platform to have some kind of self-esteem boost or anything like that, because that's not what this is for. This is more just to give the information and help you along the way in understanding how situations work. I'm going to talk about how the coroner, how the medical examiner in Latah County, how they work, how they gather their information, the truth behind a lot of insinuations that I've seen in regards to the coroner or the medical examiner, whether they were being lackadaisious in their arrival on the scene so late in the afternoon versus how they feel other people in other panels have felt about them arriving so late, and whether this was a conspiracy in itself, whether they dropped the ball, in that aspect. I'm going to go over some situations that will hopefully give you some insight where you don't so much value this conspiracy stuff versus the information stuff. So before I start, I'd like to say hello to Sabrina. Welcome to the chat. I hope there's some other people join you here in a minute. Hopefully this will be an informational live and people get the most from it. So let me go ahead and begin. I'm going to start off with a video that's going to talk about the differences between a coroner and a medical examiner. And here we go. Let me take myself off the screen there for a minute.
Hey guys, so we have 2 minutes on the terms medical examiner and coroner, and sometimes they are often misused or people think that they're interchangeable. So in our country, every state dictates whether they're going to have a medical examiner system or a coroner system, and some have this gray area version of both. So within the states, then sometimes they break down and each county determines what they're going to do inside of it. So medical examiners and coroners investigate deaths, and they investigate certain types of death. The first type is if somebody is not under a physician's care and they die of a disease or sometimes a natural cause that looks like maybe not a natural cause. They have to investigate why they showed up at the emergency room and died suddenly, or maybe why they died at home suddenly, and they have to determine then if there's foul play or if it was a disease that they need to be concerned about or if it was natural causes. They also investigate if there's an accident, a suicide, a homicide. So anything that looks abnormal or suspicious, the medical examiner and coroner or coroner are called in to investigate it and to look into it. So their report is going to house certain items. It's going to house a cause of death. It's going to house the autopsy and the drug analysis that is done for levels of anything that is in the person's system when they died, and will have a circumstances leading to the death, whether it's natural or whether it's homicide or whether it's suicide. They'll have all of that in the report then as well. So a medical examiner is a medical doctor.
Okay. So she basically said that there's a difference between them based on the county's understanding of need. So sometimes they have a coroner, sometimes they have a medical examiner. If you guys remember reading about the situation in Moscow, the coroner was an elected official and she was not a medical doctor. She was a registered nurse in the past. So she was the one that was going to be determining the homicide, the cause of death, and the manner of death. She wasn't going to do the autopsy and she wasn't going to do the toxicology. If I believe correctly, these were done in Boise. I'm not for certain. Don't quote me on that. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Um, but you can see how this individual was basically just elected to be able to come out to the homicide because, as this woman said, a suspicious death, meaning that they don't know how these four died. So the coroner had to show up to appropriate the level of death and the cause of death. And also, what I found interesting was what she said as far as they're called out whenever someone dies in their home or someone dies in their hospital that is not under a physician's care, so they can see the level of cause of death, like where was it a natural death? Did they ingest poison? What kind of death was it? So they can get an understanding of how all that works. Let's continue on.
That specializes most of the time in pathology as a pathologist, and they are the ones who do the autopsy on the person. They are appointed and hired by the state or the county to do that for all of the suspicious deaths within the county. And sometimes a medical examiner will cover multiple counties, or if it's a small state, there may be just one in a state, depending on the size of the state. So the coroner system has an elected official that the people elect. So this may be, in some states it's required that it's a medical doctor, but in others, anybody can be the coroner. So the farmer down the road, the person who owns the drugstore in town, stay-at-home mom from the community, anyone can be a coroner with no medical history. A lot of times a coroner system.
And I don't know about you, but that's kind of scary to be able to elect somebody that has no medical background whatsoever. I mean, what she just basically said is you could be working at the drugstore during the day and be the coroner at night. I mean, obviously they take a course or two, but they don't have an extensive history, you know, on the level of medical understanding. So, as we know that the individual that is the coroner for Latah County, she holds a lot of hats. She is an attorney. She was a registered nurse, and she is a coroner. So those three hats she wears. She was elected, and she was the one that showed up at the crime scene to investigate the cause of death and the manner of death.
Is in place because maybe it's a very rural area, and so you're 2 hours away from a large hospital, or your resources are very spread out, and so you don't have a medical examiner system cannot set up a medical examiner system close to you because there's not enough resources to do so. If an autopsy is then deemed needed, the coroner will have the person sent to the medical examiner, sometimes several hours away, for the autopsy to be completed. So essentially,
And this is what happened in this case. As far as we've been told, this was not in the PCA or not in any of that, but I remember reading in some form of documents where they were transferred hours away to do the autopsies. And I don't know for certain if Mr. Chapin had a different autopsy done. I don't, we heard a lot of speculation on that, but that's never been confirmed. So I can't sit here and say that it did happen.
the coroner's job is declaring the person dead, identifying the person, gathering their effects and personal items, and then returning them to the next of kin and notifying the next of kin of that death. So you may go from one state to another, and it can be a different from a coroner system to a medical examiner system. And within those states, the coroner and medical examiner could have completely different powers, completely different rules, completely different laws that they have to follow. Even two coroner systems can look completely different. One good example, so like in Georgia, the coroner has the same power as the sheriff. And the coroner is the only person who can technically arrest the sheriff. So you get into some of the legal system components of a coroner as well as the...
Did y'all hear that? In Georgia, the coroner can arrest the sheriff. I had no clue that was even a possibility anywhere. Georgia, good for you. The coroner can arrest the sheriff.
Medical and kind of death investigation part with a coroner. So what system is set up in your area? Let me know, investigate into it, look into it, see who rules in your area if there was going to be a death that occurred that was suspicious. Educate yourself, get to know about it. Other countries also have coroner systems and medical systems as well. So share with me what is in your area. 2 minutes on medical examiner and coroners.
Okay, very good stuff right there. Let me go ahead and give you another video about actually what the coroners do. Let me pull this up on YouTube because I don't want to get a copyright on this because I didn't give people their proper shout out. So let me pull this up. Hi, Sergeant Friday. I didn't say hello a while ago. Welcome to the chat. Thank you for being here. Sabrina, I said hello to you. This is giving a shout out to Career One Stop Coroner's career video. Obviously, it's different from town to town, county to county, but I wanted to show exactly kind of like the general dynamics of what a coroner does. So here we go.
Coroners are medical detectives. They work with other investigators to find the cause of deaths that are accidental, violent, or unexplained. Coroners perform or supervise autopsies and highly specialized lab tests. When a coroner is also a physician, he or she is called a medical examiner. They may visit the scene of the death and confer with law enforcement and public health officials to gather information. It's up to the coroner to determine or assign cause of death and issue a death certificate. A coroner is a public officer and may be appointed or elected. The coroner may be called to testify in court, in some cases to convict a person of a crime, so they must be methodical and detail-oriented.
So I'm pretty sure that the coroner of Latah County is going to be testifying in the Koberger case. I'm almost certain of it.
Coroners' work hours can be irregular and involve a great deal of careful documentation. Sometimes coroners must speak with relatives of the deceased, which requires sensitivity and respect and can be emotionally draining. Local laws define the specifics of each coroner's duties. A bachelor's degree is a minimum requirement. Majors vary from criminal justice to mortuary science to forensic pathology. A medical background is a plus. Many state coroners associations offer certification programs. The work of coroners is an important service to the living. It can help to solve crimes and prevent future homicides or accidental deaths.
Okay, so that was short and sweet. If y'all can remember, I'm going to play the video of the coroner from the IDAHO4 if I can find it. And exactly what she said as far as that day of the crime, or not the day of, but her interpretation of what happened. Just kind of aggravates me because I'm all ready to go, and then for some reason the video do not transfer like they should. Then I have to re-look them up. But to give me a little bit of time to do that, I'm going to play this other one where talking about how Kaylee's mother discussed about the information that the coroner gave to the underage daughter. Okay, so here we go.
That comment from the latest of the do-it-yourself interviews that Moscow police are dropping almost every day, and again, asking and answering their own questions with no reporters allowed, and it's very important to point that out. Earlier, Christy Gonsalves, Kaylee's mother, said in an interview that her family learned about that vehicle at the same time and in the same way that everybody else did, with a press release. The victims' families have long complained about a lack of information from authorities. And on that front, Mrs. Gonsalves related to NBC a bizarre and disturbing incident involving the coroner, Kathy Mabbutt. She says that she herself has never spoken with this coroner, but that her 17-year-old daughter has. That would be Kaylee's teenage sister. She says the coroner spoke on the phone with the teenager and gave graphic details of how her sister was murdered when asked. To help break all of this down, I want to bring in Bobby Chacon. He is a former FBI special agent and expert in criminal investigations. He also happens to be.
Before we get onto that platform where people start to get upset with her sharing this information, let me tell you that as we go on with this reporting of the coroner stuff, it is the coroner's job to report to the family the findings of their loved ones. So it wasn't anything nefarious that she did, other than reporting it probably to the underage relative. I mean, I don't know where the mom and dad were, but she shouldn't have related to the younger relative. Had she related to the mom and dad, then it would have been something different. Hello, Janet. Welcome to the chat.
And attorney Bobby, thank you for being here. So much to go over with you. First, about that issue where the coroner tells a 17-year-old sibling what exactly happened to her sister. That doesn't sound like protocol to me.
No, it's certainly very bad practice. I've never heard that before. Talking to a minor family member, sister of a victim. I mean, that's poor practice. I mean, all communication should be consolidated. It should be one point of contact with the authorities to the families. They should be updated on a regular basis. And this way, they're not going to 3 or 4 different sources. The coroner's office, and I get it. The coroner's office operates separately than the police department, separately than the prosecutor's office. But they all got to get on the same page, and they've got to put one person in point of contact that can update the families and keep the families in the loop.
Would it be protocol for the coroner to be able to speak to parents if the parents wanted that information? I mean, they're adults.
Yeah, sure. I think that I've heard that happen before, but again, you do it in conjunction with the investigators, because obviously there's stuff maybe in the coroner's reports that you don't want getting out, even to the family.
Yeah.
At least at this point in the investigation. So I think it's always good practice to coordinate between the coroner, the investigators, and the prosecutors that are all on board already, and they all know each other. I'm sure they've all talked at some length together. So I think that it's good practice to be coordinating all of this information together so that you don't get this lack of information or different information, conflicting information going out to the families.
So the other issue Brian was able to break today was that manager of the store said Kaylee and Maddie and her friends were always in the store. He said I'd just seen them 3 weeks prior to their death, and he said that it was a regular conversation he had about the stalker. That the girls were worried, that Kaylee was worried, that they actually would walk in groups because Kaylee was worried, that she would change her behavior, especially downtown and at that Corner Club bar, which is the last place they were before the food truck, before coming home and being murdered. And yet the police told us that they'd run every lead they could on the stalker and couldn't corroborate it. But there's Brian, he found a manager who said, I saw these girls all the time. I talked to them all the time.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if they're parsing their words, but I think they probably have a lot of uncorroborated, or what they think is uncorroborated information on stalkers or stalking behavior. It'd be very uncommon for college-age girls on this kind of campus who are very fun-loving and outgoing not to have the interest of guys that they're not interested in. And so I think that, beyond the 3 victims.
And we are going to talk about that tonight also on another case. We're going to talk about stalking behaviors. I've done that on a previous stream on my channel if you go and look for it. But I'm going to talk a little bit about stalking behavior because, as you can tell, News Nation right there is pushing the stalking narrative. They're pushing it. This manager stated they went into the home, or they went into the store all the time. And then now they were talking about a stalker. Not one that stock groceries, but one that's potentially out to harm them. Dry humor right there. I hope you're laughing.
That are deceased here, they have friends, and it would really shock me if the police didn't have the same information from some of their extended, circle of friends, because as you said, they've been talking among each other like this. They've been talking to that store manager. It's very conceivable that other friends knew about this behavior and knew about, this person or persons. And the police are, maybe they're running out a bunch of leads that they haven't found a second or a third corroborating source for. But it's my thought that they probably are following this stuff. They just haven't gotten enough of it.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com.
Okay. So basically what you found out there was that the coroner gave valuable information to an underage member of the family where she was doing her job duty, because as you're going to find out in some of these other videos or some of the articles that I'm going to be reading to you, that is part of the coroner's duty, is to notify the next of kin the information and to kind of give them an update on exactly what she found out was the cause of death, what was, what happened, what she saw, what she investigated. The first video was talking about her being a medical detective. So think about what a detective does. They arrive on the scene and they have to take a look at the crime scene. As I've stated in some other videos, you have to look around, identify the situation, notify first whoever needs to be notified after the fact that you find out who these people are. Because, somebody could tell you, hey, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so, but you have to do your job to be able to find out who these deceased people are. You just don't run in there and say, okay, that's Ethan, that's Kaylee, that's Maddie, that's Xana, because you told me so. No, you have to do some investigating. You have to look at the bodies. You have to look at the circumstances surrounding them being deceased. You have to do some investigative work. I'm going to play another video, and this one, the one that I wanted to show you guys before that one, but you get the point. I've kind of gave you a little intro into it, so here we go. And listen closely to what she says, because I know we've all seen this. This is not new material, but I want you to pay attention to what she says and how she says it. Because when you watched it the first time or the fifth time or whatever, you weren't, I promise you, you probably weren't listening correctly to what she was saying in between the lines because she says a lot. Here we go.
Kathy, with a C, Mabbutt, Mabbutt.
And I'm gonna ask you, how long have you been doing this for?
I've been doing it for 16 years, and I just got reelected for another 4.
So what is it that, or I guess, when did you get the call on Sunday?
I got the call just a few minutes after noon that there were 4 homicides, but I didn't go to the scene because of law enforcement doing their investigation first. So I didn't actually go to the scene until about 5 or 5:30.
Can you walk us through, like,
Okay, so she said she didn't go to the scene until about 5 or 5:30 because law enforcement was doing their investigation. So she's not just going to bust in there and say, okay, get out of the way, let me go and do what I need to do and this, that, and the other. No, there's a common professional courtesy and she has to wait. I mean, it's not, I mean, to be fair, it's not like anything is more important than to find out the information that you need to find out and to coincide it with the individuals that are working with you. So the police are obviously going to be working with her and she's going to have to collaborate her evidence with the police as well. So she's waiting for them to get done with their job so she can go and do hers. Here we go.
like for our viewers, kind of the process between when police show up and then you guys getting the bodies and doing your examinations?
Sure. Well, law enforcement goes through and looks for any evidence, takes videos and pictures of everything in there, and they'll start talking with people. So I don't really need to be there for that. They can't move the bodies. I mean, the bodies have to stay as they were until the coroner gets there. So that's what my job is, to
And
look at
then
the
as
bodies.
a coroner, do you guys do the autopsies and all that?
No, we some do if they're an actual medical examiner, but we have forensic pathologists and we contract with Spokane to do that.
So in your experience, what is it that you saw when you showed up?
Well, there was a lot of blood. It's a very sad scene with 4 murdered college students.
You're ruling all 4 deaths homicides?
Yes.
And can you give us a manner of death?
I believe that the press release was that they were from a sharp object. So
stabbings.
yeah, I will know more after the autopsies tomorrow.
Okay, so right there she says from a sharp object. There's a press release that tells you more, but we'll know more after the autopsies tomorrow. So she gave a quote there.
And do you believe this could be like a murder suicide or?
No, there are 4 homicides.
4 homicides. Okay. And when it comes to doing the investigation post autopsy, that falls on you, correct?
Yes, it's my job to determine the manner and mechanism of death.
And then I know with toxicology results, there can often be, in Washington, a delay. So do you have any idea how long it could take, if those were relevant, to get any type of results back on that?
Well, the toxicology reports, right, they usually take 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes longer. But they might, I don't think they're going to be relevant in the actual manner or cause of death.
And do we know how long?
So right there she said the toxicology usually takes 4 to 6 weeks. But she doesn't think they're going to be relevant in the cause of death. And people have ran with that. They have ran with that. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the speculation that people have stated with that remark right there, but if you can basically understand English, you can understand verbal barrage of wording, she says, I don't believe that that's going to be relevant to the cause of death, meaning that there was no potential overdoses, there was no alcohol related stuff. You know what I mean? Like when you have toxicology, you're determining whether it was an OD or something of that nature. And people ran with that. And that's where the speculations of the drugs and all this other stuff. Why didn't they do why aren't they going to do toxicology? This and that and the other. Well, she basically told you their manner of death was not determined by toxicology. It was not determined by them ODing or them, having alcohol poisoning and passing away. Theirs was done by a sharp object. Simple as that. But people have ran with it and twisted it and turned it, and they've turned her words to mean so many things.
Between the time of death and when police found them, approximately?
No, I don't know for sure.
Do we have like any, like, could it have been hours? Could it have been a day? Was it maybe close? Like, is there any sort of like time frame there?
Not that I'm aware of.
So she don't really know the time of death. And this is where individuals also, they start attacking and tearing down her expertise and this and that and the other. How could she not know? She's a coroner. How could she not know? Because of the, people that are trained in that line of work or former nurses or whatever, or are nurses or whatever, they understand the concept. But instantly, because this lady says she doesn't know, does it mean that she's not proficient to do her job? Or is that speculating because she did not know or was told not to tell the time frame of their passing? Because we only know what she's saying right now. She could have been told, hey, if you get asked what the time frame of the deaths were, say nothing or act vague because we don't want that out there yet. Simple as that.
And you said the scene was really difficult. I mean, is this something you've had to deal with before in Moscow?
Since I've been coroner, there have been at least 2 other multiple homicide scenes that I've been involved in. So
Would you say this is probably the most recent?
no, it's hard to just single it out. It's the only one I've been to where there have been 4 people at one scene. There have been the other ones have had multiple scenes.
And was anybody else injured, like any non-deceased people?
Not that I'm aware of, but I wouldn't necessarily be notified either.
Okay. I didn't know if that was like because the injuries could be similar to matter to you.
Oh,
But
right.
no. Okay.
Were the deceased all in close proximity to each other, or were they in different rooms?
I don't know that I can discuss that.
That was my next question too. So I think, yeah.
Will we be able to get
I mean, this was before the gag order, so obviously somebody coached her up and said, hey, these are some of the things that we want you to be able to say, and these are some of the things that we don't want you to say. Because if you can remember the chief giving his press conferences and things of that nature, that's how he deflected the questions. I can't discuss that right now. We're in an active investigation. We can't discuss that right now. We can't talk about that right now. Now, if she was able to say at this moment exactly what she wanted to say, it might have cleared up a lot of speculation.
get a copy of your report once it's completed? I'm sure it'll be.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, just call.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you know what the time frame for that would be?
It just depends on how relevant the toxicology report is, but
Oh, okay. Okay.
So-
So it was like the 4 to 6 weeks.
it could be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, thank you.
We appreciate it.
sure.
I mean, was that a zoom up to see if they could get any any notes off the notepad to be discussing about? I mean, like we say, new cells. Sabrina says, this all should be better regulated. You'll see all the mistakes happening. I'm sure there was a lot of mistakes. As she stated, this is the first multiple stabbing that she's ever been a part of. So I could probably contend to think that she wasn't very prepared for this. She probably was blindsided like everybody else. And they probably did make a lot of mistakes. And hopefully it doesn't cost them in the trial. I want to talk about a mock crime scene. Okay, a mock crime scene investigation. I want to give credit to Rodolfo King and Bautista. He's the individual that made this video. So let's give him a little shout out. Hope you guys are enjoying this. If you're enjoying this, press a 1. If you're not enjoying this, press a 2. Here we go. Okay. Rodolfo King A. Bautista is the answer to your question, Sabrina. You know, right there, it just gave you a rundown of everything that happens in a criminal case from start to finish. It was able to give you how evidence was gathered, who, as far as the teams that came in to document chain of custody, arrest warrant, arrest, and that is what people didn't see that occurred in this IDAHO4 case. They didn't see all that. They just saw pictures. They saw bits and pieces. They saw people dusting for prints. They saw people. They didn't even see people swabbing for DNA, I don't think. But what they didn't see, they don't understand sometimes. And that's when the speculations occur. That's whenever, well, she dropped the glove on the ground and then picked it up and threw it back in. She contaminated everything. How do you know she was touching any evidence? How do you know she contaminated anything? She could have been outside just walking around taking notes. We just saw her drop the glove, throw it back in the brown paper bag, and move along. We didn't see the end of the process, but you know what? What we didn't see was more important than what we did see. And that's what I wanted to focus on tonight when death came to town. You know, death came to town that night on November 13th, 2022. And since death came to town, people forgot that it was an actual murder that took place of 4 innocent college students, and a burglary took place. And from the moment that they were given certain information, photos, updates, videos, people started to make up their own mind about who did it, why they did it, how they did it. They started bashing on the investigators, how they weren't wearing gloves, and they were one person sneezed, or one person coughed, or one person wasn't wearing a face mask as far as whatever. How do you know that these people were gathering evidence just because they were around people that were gathering the evidence does not mean that these people were gathering evidence. And you could say, well, they were wearing clothing like they were gathering evidence. They had this and that. Did you see the different teams that showed up at this crime? There was 3 levels of teams, and then there were the investigators at the laboratory, the fingerprints. There was a lot of people involved in this. And this was a small crime. This was one victim, one perpetrator. But I just wanted to show this because I watched it and I thought, man, this is interesting because it processes the whole thing from start to finish until, actually the interrogation. Because he was interrogated after fact. He wasn't interviewed. What they didn't show is them interviewing the witness that called in the initial 911 call. The janitor-looking guy that saw the killer go down the stairs. They didn't show him being interviewed, but I guess he was interviewed, and that's how they got some of the information. I mean, but they were trying to get the basics of the whole scenario rather than just focus on one step at a time. You know, it was awesome. I liked it. I liked it. Well, we're almost at an hour, and I don't want to go much longer than that. Not on this one. I'm going to have a part 2, and I'm going to talk about the stalking. I'm going to show a video on the stalking. I'm going to show a little more on the process of how blood is investigated, how fingerprints are investigated. To kind of conclude this presentation, I'm really not wanting to make 3-4 hour lives if I can help it. But I hope that you guys have an awesome rest of your evening and that your start of the week, it just is amazing. You know, I can say that because I do honestly want the people who come to my channel to have an amazing start to the week. And if you're suffering from any kind of medical issues or mental health issues or anything, please take care of yourself. If it's so bad that you're feeling about hurting yourself or maybe hurting somebody else, please reach out to some professional help. 911, go to a hospital, get some help, because sometimes that's what's needed is a professional intervention, because you can't, you know, sometimes you do things you can't come back from. So, you know what comes next? Maestro, cue the music.